You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is, if getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now, 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
At St. Jude, a family never sees a bill at all. It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
Sometimes we need to slow down and remember the simple pleasures in life. Good coffee, good books, and good company. Come on in. Take a seat. The coffee's just been brewed. Let's see who we have in the coffee shop today. What a beautiful day to be in the coffee shop. Now, who can I talk books and writing? Let's look around. Tahani Nelson. Is that an arc on your table? The last FAoii? And it's got your name on it? And it's got your name on it? And it's an arc? I am so stealing it when we're done talking. All right, so tell me about The Last FAoii.
The Last FAoii is my first published novel. It's about a matriarchal society where girls are raised to be warriors and are taught magic from an early age. And Kaiya is one of these girls. And then she thinks that nothing in the world could possibly destroy this world that's been created until her monastery and her sisters are all slaughtered. And the entire story is about her trying to find out who's trying to destroy her heritage and then stopping that.
Wow, so her whole life is essentially ripped apart.
From the very beginning, the first 3 chapters, I woke up in the middle of the night at like 2 a.m. and wrote them out and then went back to sleep. And the first 3 chapters are her life and then watching it just be torn away. And so you're kind of just thrown into her world and its destruction immediately. And I'm so excited to share with what happens as she finishes the quest to save everything.
I must say it sounds amazing. And while I've been told more than once I'll read anything if it sits in front of me long enough, including the cereal box, this sounds like a book I could really get interested in because, well, my primary genre when there's nothing else and I actually have to go out and pick up a book, it's usually either history or thriller.
Oh, I love history. I absolutely love history. And I did use a lot of anti-totalitarian regimes or totalitarian regimes and their fall as inspiration for this story because history is such a wonderful story in itself. I'm just really bad at remembering dates. So I like to take those ideas and the concepts that make our world so grand and put them into a fantasy world where I can tweak things and nobody yells at me.
So this is a fantasy?
It is. It's an epic fantasy.
Epic fantasy. So that means there's another one?
I have been working on the sequel, and it's absolutely deliciously dark. The Last FAoii is a very solid fantasy, and it has some dark elements to it, but it is a lot of a coming-of-age story for Kaiya-faoii. She's a young adult in the story, and she is trying to save her world, but in the sequel, it just continually gets darker. So it is a series, and it will continue to be a series.
Now, that is a gorgeous cover. I know they say don't judge a book by its cover, but everybody does. So, how did you get such a gorgeous cover?
It's actually been kind of a struggle. I didn't have the money for a cover artist, and so this cover is a stock photo, and my friends who love me, despite all my flaws and Photoshop, and us all working together to find a cover that represented FAoii Kaiya. And it's incredibly difficult to find people of color in fantasy poses for books and things like that. So I was so excited to find this cover and that I had so many wonderful friends who were willing to help me out with it.
Now, that sounds like quite the adventure in and of itself, just having a bunch of people working working on the cover. Sure there wasn't too many cooks in the kitchen, although it looks gorgeous.
Most of the when I say a bunch of people, most of them were looking at different stock image sites and sending me ideas after they had been my beta readers. And then it was just me and one other person that put on the actual cover together. But everyone that helped me find the stock image itself, that's what I mean when I say that I had so many friends looking out for me, because I was so concerned I wasn't going to be able to create a cover by myself that was worthy of the book. And so they helped me do that.
Well, that is awesome. Now, big question. When's everybody else going to get their hands on this?
Oh, the book comes out tomorrow. I'm so excited about it. It's been such a long time coming, and I know that a lot of people have pre-ordered, and you can still pre-order tonight if you want to. But it comes out tomorrow, and it's going to be available through Inkshares, where I published it, and Barnes & Noble, and Amazon, and I'm just so excited for it to be a real book after all this time.
Okay, so it comes out tomorrow, October 3rd.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, wow. That is new releases are just such fun. I mean, I have no problem discussing a book that's been out for some time. They can be fascinating works that you just never knew about. But new releases are just fun.
And there's something so exciting about being one of the first people to see something and explore it. And so I'm really excited that there's so many people that wanted to be part of that and pre-ordered the book and are ready to explore this new world together. And so it's going to be a good time.
How do you create an entire world? I mean, I'm not a writer. This whole concept just boggles my brain. I'm an avid reader, but I can't write.
The last fight was interesting because, like I said earlier, I woke up in the middle of the night with a very specific scene in my head, and I woke up and I wrote the entire thing. It ended up being the first 3 chapters of the book, and then I went back to sleep, and the next morning I just wanted to keep writing that story. And this idea of a matriarchal society where women are warriors and women are able to be are able to use magic, but it's still not an equal society, was really strong with me. Like, I really wanted to create that and show that it would be interesting, but it doesn't actually mean that it's perfect. Like, there's still a huge war going on in the story because there is no utopia in the things we're currently fighting about. And then because of it being a matriarchal society and a woman-centric society, our current language didn't really add to that. And so I created the language that is it has male and female conjugations for everything. The word faoii means warrior, but the female conjugation of oii is on the end of any words that has to do with a female. And so there's a lot of words in the book that are specifically for females or males, and it just continues to show the world as being something that's conflicted, but that can have equality in it. And I don't know, the world wanted to be created, and I'm glad that it gave me the chance to do it.
I think it sounds fantastic. So, once you have this idea in your head, are you a plotter? Like, you sit down and you outline where the story's going and everything from point A to point Z, and all the little steps in between, or are you more of a pantser?
I am so definitely a pantser. I don't know where the story is going until I get there. I don't know how many times the main character, Kaiya, did something terrible and ended up dying in a chapter, and I had to rewrite that chapter and put her in a different situation. I am definitely a pantser, but I had because the world was so solid in my mind, it made it a lot easier to create the parts of the world as I was going.
Well, I think it sounds absolutely amazing. I can't wait. Like I said, I tend to be a thriller reader at heart, but this book seems like it'll have enough action to keep me on the edge of my seat.
There is a lot of action in it. I love writing battle scenes, and I love writing characters so that you understand why those characters are willing to fight that battle and why they're putting everything into it. And so it's it should be fun. And I made it so that almost any age group can enjoy it. I wouldn't give it to your young daughters, but adults and young adults, I think both will really enjoy this book.
Maybe even a mature teenager?
A mature teenager would definitely enjoy it.
Okay. I think it sounds absolutely thrilling. So, what role do the men have in this society?
Actually, believe it or not, the men are Kaiya doesn't see it this way because she grew up in the society. So it takes a while for her to get to the point where she realizes that men have kind of been oppressed for her entire life. She grew up knowing that women were strong and women were capable of wielding magic and women were capable of being leaders. And then in the story, she meets her brother that she didn't even know she had because males aren't allowed to be part of the monasteries. So she didn't even know that she had this brother, but he's willing to fight for a chance to be equal. And that's when she kind of realizes that the monastery that she grew up in wasn't as perfect as she thought it was. And maybe it crumbling was the only way for her to figure out what the world is really like.
Wow. Sounds absolutely fascinating. So did you take something out of our society and kind of twist it into a fantasy division to make a statement, or wasn't that at all on your mind when you were writing this?
It wasn't on purpose, but you can't write a story that's worth reading if you don't take from what you know. And I've seen oppression of gender my entire life, and I've seen oppression of people. And so I think it would have been impossible to write a truly intriguing story without taking the parts of life that I find impactful and putting it in there. I didn't mean to create a story where the oppression of feminism was completely turned on its head, but I do believe that the equality of genders is important, and so it makes sense to me that I ended up eventually creating a story that highlights that.
Like I said, I think it's fantastic how you took essentially a modern day conflict that we see played out every day in one aspect or another, and as we were talking off air, even on the news, and put it into a fantasy realm where you can get away from the stereotypical male-dominated thing and make it a female-dominated, flipped it on its head, and we're able to essentially make a statement without making it overly political, for lack of a better term.
And again, I didn't do that on purpose, but I'm glad that so many of the groups that have attached themselves to this book, that have really supported this book, saw that. It was actually somebody else that pointed out to me, like, this was a very good feminist book. And I'm like, I didn't realize that, but I'm glad that you like it. The main character is gay, and that's not something I ever brought out specifically as an issue in the book. Like, she never has to overcome society not liking her gay, her sexuality. She never has to overcome that. She just meets somebody and falls in love with her, and that's a part of the story that's important, but not something to overcome. And a lot of people that support the LGBT movement were like, we love that you made that important and accepted, and that says more strongly of your support of LGBT than of making an entire story about her sexuality, which kind of makes it different. The fact that you accepted it from the beginning makes it wonderful. And I was really excited about that too, because I didn't mean to put these politics into the story. I just wrote what I wanted a character to be like, and she ended up being a wonderful person that a lot of people are standing behind.
Now, your publishing path is one that I haven't had on the show before. You said Inkshares. Why don't you tell me a little bit about Inkshares and what makes it so unique?
Inkshares is a crowd-funded publishing company. You put up a draft as a writer. You put up a draft or an idea, and you tell people about it. And if people like the idea, and if people want to support that idea or support that book, they pre-order a copy of it, either a digital copy or a paperback copy. And then if you sell enough pre-orders, then Inkshares publishes it, and everybody gets their copies, and it becomes a real book. If you don't sell enough copies, if it turns out you need to work on your writing style or you need to work on your ideas first, then everyone gets a refund and you start back where you are. So nobody loses anything, but it has such a potential of creating something amazing and wonderful that hadn't been seen before, and that is difficult to publish traditionally because it is so different. And so I was really, really lucky to find Inkshares and able to publish this book that on a lot of levels I think that many people think wasn't ready to be published. Like, not many people see women of color as the head of a fantasy story, and LGBT in fantasy is still pretty rare. Like, there's a lot of small parts that I don't know if traditional publishers would have been ready for, but Inkshares was.
How did you even find out about Inkshares?
Somebody actually sent me the link. Originally, I did try to publish The Last Faoii traditionally. I spent 2 years looking for agents. I got 200 rejection letters before, bless her heart, one of the agents finally told me, your story is too long to publish as a debut novel. And so then I worked on editing it and correcting it and making it more manageable sized. And then I was out of agents. I had no one to contact. I had dug myself a hole. And then somebody's like, hey, I want to read this book. I was one of your beta readers. I want it to happen. I would pre-order a copy just for chance of it happening. And they showed me Inkshares, and it took off. I entered Inkshares' largest contest to date, their fantasy contest, and I got in the top 5. And it really just, people wanted to read it, and I'm so excited that they did because I wanted to tell it.
Well, it sounds fantastic. So how long was that draft that the agent said was too long for a debut novel?
My original draft of The Last Faoii was 117,000 words, which for a debut novel, it's supposed to be closer to like 98,000, but I didn't know that at the time. I had no idea what I was doing at the beginning of all of this. I just knew I wanted to tell a story, and I thought I could. And people are beginning to say that I can.
So how long is the final version?
The final version of the novel is 98,000 words, which is about exactly where a debut novel should be. Debut fantasy novel. If it's in a different genre, it's supposed to be slightly shorter, but because fantasy involves so much world building, it is generally accepted as okay for them to be longer as a debut novel.
So are you an avid fantasy reader, or how did you decide to pick fantasy as your writing genre?
I've always loved fantasy. For as long as I can remember, I've loved fantasy. I wrote my first fantasy novel in high school, and it was just terrible. It was so bad. It was this 320,000 word monstrosity that I still have like printed out in a box underneath my bed. But I always loved fantasy because I always loved the idea of worlds with magic. Like, our world is so amazing and it's so interesting, but imagine how much it could be with magic in it. And that's where my love of fantasy always came from, was just the love of magic.
Well, I have to say fantasy is quite popular. I mean, if we didn't have fantasy writers, we wouldn't have had the tale everyone knows is Harry Potter.
Oh, and J.K. Rowling is just an amazing author all on her own, and her growth as a woman, everything she went to as a woman before she was famous as an author is just so inspiring to me. And it's just another sign that there's magic in this world, just not in the same way.
Okay, you just brought up what she went through as a woman. Would you care to share? Because I don't know that much about J.K. Rowling.
I find J.K. Rowling as a personal inspiration because she suffered from depression. She was suicidal. She was a single mother who was going through a terrible divorce when she started writing the Harry Potter series, and she overcame all of that so she could give the world something wonderful. And that's so amazing to me. Like, that's such a wonderful, selfless thing. And then I'm glad that the universe decided to pay her back, and now she's a very successful and I hope happy person because she created something wonderful and she shared it with everyone.
How do you research a fantasy novel? I mean, how do you research something like The Last Faoii?
For The Last Faoii, I looked into a lot of totalitarian regimes. The Last Faoii is about Kaiya trying to bring down the army that slaughtered her family and slaughtered her entire monastery. And so I looked a lot into dictators and their political beliefs, and then I tried to find out why they believe that was the best thing for their countries. Because no evil person in a book is completely evil. They have to think from their own point of view that they're doing the right thing. And so creating the antagonist in this book was amazing, because I hate him because he does some horrible, horrible things in the book, but I also understand why he does them and why he's trying to ultimately bring equality to his male soldiers. His army is made up of males, whereas the Faoii are female. And so this idea of equality, but him going to any lengths, it took a lot of research on dictatorship and views from the opposite views of the current political feminist issues that we're having, and trying to find out why the people that I don't agree with believe what they believe. And I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about my beliefs in doing that, and I think I created a better story because of it.
I think that just sounds like a fascinating experience. You said you learned a lot about yourself. Would you care to share a little bit about what you learned about your beliefs or about yourself?
I think a lot of the things I learned about myself is, I think when I started creating the story in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m., I think there was some part of me that thought, like, yeah, no, women would be fantastic as the sole rulers in the world, and women would be fantastic as the ones that were leading everything. And then, like, as I grew up and as I wrote a little bit more, I'm like, no, has to be equality. There's no reason that our biological organs makes us better or worse than anything else. And Alina, Kaiya's mentor at the beginning of the story, she was very, very much like, men are too rash and men will fight anything before they think about something, which is something I've heard a lot from other women, that men are rash and men are brutal and men act before they think. And I think that because I heard that so much from so many people, I started to believe it. But as I created Kaiya-faoii's story, I realized that I don't believe that. We're products of our society, and that we can grow as a society if we understand the opposite sides' viewpoints as well. And so I think that I learned a lot about myself and about my belief systems, at least about feminism, from writing this book.
Well, I've got to say that I have been surrounded by some of America's toughest warriors, because I am a Special Forces widow. And my first husband was United States Special Forces. All male, alpha males to the extreme. But you know what they are when they're not geared up for a battle? Do you know what they are on the inside?
Human?
Teddy bears. They're big
Teddy
old
bears.
teddy bears. I mean, they love to... You get them away from the battle, and you get them at a cookout with some hot dogs, hamburgers, and some water guns and some kids, and you will see them playing like they are 10-year-old kids, just right down having fun. They're absolute teddy bears.
And that's the thing, is we're all human. That's the most important thing, is that there's nothing about our biological makeup, at least for our anatomy, that should affect us so greatly in our ability to lead, or our ability to care, or our ability to be amazing. But we seem to get caught up on things like that. And I've never met somebody that was completely masculine or completely feminine, because we're all teddy bears sometimes and we're all warriors other times. And I think people might forget that.
I actually have to say, I think that is something that's long forgotten, and people will look at these battle-hardened men, and they don't get to see their quiet moments. They just see the stories that make the headlines, and they'll say, oh, well, he must just be a thug. But they don't realize these guys see the most horrific things. These guys see things they can never talk about with the average person. But yet, you get them at a picnic or a pool party. One of their buddies has a kid's birthday party, and they are the biggest teddy bears in the world.
That's wonderful, and I think that is something that I did write a mostly militaristic novel. For a fantasy novel, there is a lot of fighting, there's a lot of military, but there's also a lot of life outside of that. And I think that's something that people need to see more of on all aspects of it is that it changes you, but it doesn't make you 100% of who you are, the military. There's so much that we don't see in the news about people on all walks of life.
There is. Like a friend of mine told me, you can't explain the entire story in a 30-second soundbite. Right. Well said. That was the advice given to me when I first started actually doing my show. And that's why I actually believe in I don't do the 7-minute segments you see on commercial radio or commercial television. How much can you really say in 7 minutes? That's why my show, I do 30 minutes.
Every time you write a novel or try to query a novel to a publisher or to an agent, you have to come up with a tagline, the one sentence that catches their attention and tells them what the story is about. And I have so much trouble with that because you can't put something that you've worked years on into one sentence, but that's what we do as people. Like, we put everything we are into our initial meetings with anyone, and that's all people see is what they get in that 7 minutes in that soundbite. And I think it's interesting because that's what intrigues us to learn more about something or someone, or scares us off.
Exactly. What annoys me is the people that don't dig deeper after that 7-minute clip is over or that 30-second soundbite has passed. They don't dig deeper.
Or they judge the entire article on the title.
Oh, yes. I produce another show for the station. It's called Conversations in Science. And our science expert, Dr. Judy Elmore, she has a PhD in astronomy. But I have never heard her get on her soapbox more than the day there was an article headlined, "Climate Change Causes Diabetes." She
oh my goodness,
lost it. And I'm not talking lost it a little. She did 30 minutes on this. Now, she said there was some scientific basis on it, but that the headline went from A to Z, and the story went from A to X without stopping at a lot of important places in between. You could make a scientific case for it, but you've got to include all the missing pieces. And that's what absolutely sent her over the edge, was the headline.
So much of our headlines now are just clickbait, but it actually requires people to click on them and then read them and learn the information, and I think a lot of us skip that. It's really, for a society where we live completely in a world where we can get any sort of knowledge we need at the click of a button, we're really not very good at getting the correct information, and we're not seeing what buttons we should be clicking.
Exactly. It's one of those things of, there's so much more to the world than what any of the news outlets put out, or that so much more to the world than that 30-second soundbite or that audio clip.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's how the pieces of the puzzle are constructed that makes it fascinating. So what was the biggest thing you had to overcome in your personal experience of writing this book?
The time constraints was difficult. I did write the book while I was teaching high school English up on the High Line at a small reservation school. And so it's hard to find time to write and edit and whatnot around lesson plans and grading papers and whatnot. And then editing is its own thing that I had not really ever worked with before. If you are an avid reader, you know that a story sounds good when it kind of flows naturally. But learning to write like that is so incredibly different. And so you put in information and you think that it's necessary, and you get so attached to this sentence that you polished and you changed and then you worked on, and then for someone to eventually tell you, like, that sentence isn't necessary, it almost hurts you because you worked so hard on that one sentence. So editing was really interesting for me because it helped me learn to let go of things. Even if I worked on something for months and polished up this paragraph and made it perfect, if it wasn't adding to the overall story, it shouldn't be in there. And eventually I had to learn that this story wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't about how hard I worked on it. It was about whoever was going to read it someday and to give them the best thing I could. So editing is really, really difficult, but it also helped me to learn how to let go of what wasn't necessary, and how to make what is necessary shine through.
Well, I've heard editing referred to as slaying your darlings more than once.
Yep.
So
and it is. It hurts, but it's so worth it, and it's such a better book now because I went through it.
Well, on that note, yes, there are bills and everything, and it is time to pay those radio station bills and take that ever-important commercial break. So I'm going to refill our coffee, and we will see you on the other side.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk, or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your healthcare? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their healthcare. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your healthcare, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your healthcare while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
All right, I thank y'all for hanging in there with us while we paid those radio station bills. And Tahani, you said you needed another cup of tea, so let's make that happen. And we will get back on with this conversation. So, with ink shares, you have to market your book before it's a finished product. You don't have a cover art or anything to put up there. So how do you get enough pre-orders to make this happen?
It's definitely not easy. Crowdfunding a dream is, I think, way more difficult than crowdfunding something that is solid and can be in somebody's hands. Luckily, the people you're trying to crowdfund to like to read. And so if you've got excerpts and chapters, I started off my crowdfunding campaign with my book finished. And so I was able to give people excerpts and talk to people about the characters and tell them what was coming. And so I had something a little bit more solid than a lot of people have when they start an Inkshares campaign. And then the contest also really helped because the contest gives a sense of urgency and like, wow, I really need people to help me pre-order this book. But mostly it comes from just trying to make a connection with people, one-on-one talking, and be like, hey, I've seen that you've read a lot of books like this. Will you look at this paragraph I wrote or this excerpt I wrote and tell me what you think? And then once people get excited about the characters you introduce them to, they're more likely to try and order one themselves and get their friends to order one as well. My biggest spike in sales came from when The Last Faoii won an award from a syndicate on Inkshares called Break the Bechdel with Strong Female Characters. I don't know if you know the Bechdel test.
No, I've never heard of it. Do tell.
So the Bechdel test is if two named women in a story or in a movie talk to each other about something other than a guy. And you'd be amazed at how many Disney movies fail that, where two named female characters talk about anything other than a man. And so that's a huge syndicate on Inkshares. A syndicate is a bunch of people that all look for books that follow these guidelines, and then they all support it. And it's one of the largest syndicates on Inkshares. It was the largest at the time. And when they found The Last Faoii, and I told them about The Last Faoii, and they saw that it was an entire civilization of women that were trying to prove themselves as more than just wives or more than just sisters, and they supported that. And then information about The Last Faoii and news of The Last Faoii really took off, and it was my first big spike in pre-orders because people decided that I'd created something that they could get behind it, that they wanted to support. And a lot of it was word of mouth, just a lot of one-on-one talking until people were like, you know what? Yeah, this sounds like something I would like my sister to read, or my friend, or my brother, or my daughter. And so it was a lot of very slow building, but it eventually made it.
I think it sounds absolutely fantastic. And like I said, I can't wait to snatch that copy off the table. It's mine. It's mine.
You just have to wait till tomorrow. You just have to wait until tomorrow.
Nope, that copy on the table is going home with me. Everybody else can get theirs tomorrow. All right.
It has been a long time coming, and I'm so glad that so many people stood behind it to make it real.
Well, when you're not writing and creating fantastic worlds, what are you doing? Are you still teaching?
I do have a degree in teaching high school English, and that is my passion. I love teaching high school. Currently, because my husband got a job in the town I now live in, and they weren't hiring at the local high school, so right now I'm working with infants and toddlers. And it's a very busy job. I wouldn't say that it's my calling, but I do feel fulfilled at the end of the day because I'm helping build strong lives from such a young foundation. But it's exhausting. It's so exhausting.
Oh, I bet it is. So is reading one of those passions you love to share with the children that you interact with?
I love reading. I love reading all books. Obviously, I'm not going to read an awesome fantasy novel to a 2-year-old, but I do love to read with these children early because I want to help build that idea into them at a young age. Growing up, my family, I've never seen my parents watch a full episode of anything. We always read in our house, and I know that that's a huge reason on why I started reading myself, and probably the main reason I started writing. And so being able to work with these really young children at such an early age and help introduce them to the love of reading because I can make funny voices and I show them the pictures and they laugh and point and try to read themselves, it's just great because I feel like reading is starting to subside in our culture, and I want the next generation to have that love and that passion like our generation did.
Well, I've often been overheard to say, reading is one addiction I'll happily feed.
Right. Yeah, I don't need to sleep when I have a brand new novel that I can be reading.
Oh, I have certain authors that I will take off work the next day, stay up all night, and do everything under the sun to read that novel the second it comes out. Even if end up having 2 or 3 different versions of it, because the electronic version of the iBook hit before the electronic version of the Kindle.
Oh, and I love things like I love being part of and inside a world that somebody else created 100% in their own mind and then put it on paper with something as earthly as a pen. Like, I can't begin to tell you how much I appreciate and respect other authors for being able to create that and then being willing to share that with other people. And the fact that I have gotten to the point where I feel like I can do that as well, it's humbling, because creating something wonderful and then having other people want to experience that is an amazing feeling, and it's something that you can give and nobody is lesser. Nobody runs out of it. Nobody loses anything. It's just something that adds to the world, and I love it.
So how long did it actually take you to write the last Faoii?
For the initial writing, before I started contacting agents and then eventually published, it took me 2 years. And that was the main storyline. I told you I was a pantser, and that the characters would lead me on really strange side quests and things like that I'd eventually delete and then get them back on track. I know that sounds crazy, but it happened. Those characters, I can't control them. But it did take me a solid 2 years to completely write the story around my other teaching job.
So did you hire a professional editor to help you with the last Faoii?
When I got through Inkshares and I crowdfunded enough pre-orders to be able to publish, they actually assigned me to an editor over at Reedsy. And they were so amazing. I was so amazed by how wonderful my editor was and whatnot, because it is difficult and kind of expensive to hire an editor, but it's something that if you're going to self-publish, or if you don't have access to an editor from your publisher through your agent or whatever, you've got to go with an edit. You have to find a professional editor, because you're too attached to it otherwise, and you won't take out the things that need to be taken out. You need it to be seen by a fresh pair of eyes so that'll be the best book it can be. And I didn't know that before, and I'm so glad that I got such a wonderful editor at Reedsy, because it's a much, much stronger book now.
So while editing is painful, it definitely is part of the growth process?
It's so necessary. Like, I thought that I knew what I was doing, and I thought that my book was perfect back when it was 117,000 words. And I think a lot of it is because I was so attached to every word I created. And when you write something, you know what you intended, and you know what happened in the story before, and you know what happened in the story later. But you also know the things that didn't work and that you've already taken out, and you know the things that you thought about putting in but decided not to. And so you've got this much more cluttered version of the world in your head than what the reader's going to see. And so if you don't edit, you're going to leave some of that clutter in there. And while you think it's necessary, a professional editor, can show you where it's not necessary and where a clean, beautiful version is going to help your readers and your story become better at the end.
Well, I've often heard it said that when J.K. Rowling actually discusses any of her Harry Potter stories with the readers, it's like she somehow left out 20 pages, is how the readers feel, because, of course, she's got the whole story in her head.
Yeah, and I'm sure that she has versions of the characters in her head that we never got to see. Who knows how many conversations happened that were eventually deleted because they weren't necessary for the plot, but in her head they're still there. So those conversations happened, and those birthday parties we never saw happen, and those weird mistakes that her characters might still be embarrassed about 10 years later, they might have happened, but we didn't see them. And I don't know, writers are amazing because they keep entire worlds in their heads all the time. And I think it's fun to differentiate between the real world and that world sometimes.
So, what advice would you give to a new writer?
Depends on how new writer we're talking about. If they're just starting to write, then like if you're just sitting down on a blank page and you're about to create something wonderful, don't worry about if you're going to create something wonderful. Just write to write, and don't worry about editing right now. You can get to that part later. Just write what you want and keep going until you can't write anymore and see what you've created, and then go back. If you've already passed that point and you have something that you think is wonderful and you think it's ready, it's probably not. Make sure you go to an editor or find a beta reader. Find somebody that's not attached to it to help you make it better, and listen to them. And if you've gotten through that point and now you're having trouble publishing or you're having trouble finding an agent, I'd say don't give up, because I had given up after, I think, rejection 200, and now it's going to be real tomorrow because I just kept going for it. So whatever process or whatever step in the process you're at right now, there's more steps coming, and it doesn't seem like it, but you're going to get there, and it's going to be fantastic.
Well, I think that is outstanding advice. Now, the best advice I've ever heard, which kind of follows this vein, and it's from my favorite mainstream traditionally published author, Brad Thor, was give yourself permission to write a lousy first draft.
That's amazing advice, and Brad Thor would definitely know because he's an amazing writer. Oh my goodness. But yeah, your first draft, it's going to be terrible, and that's okay because it's just word vomit at that point. It's just you putting everything that's in your head onto paper as quickly as you can, and that's fine. As once it's on paper, it's easier to clean up, but you got to get it out of your head first so there's room up there for other things. That's great advice.
Well, like I said, I'm not a writer, but I'm surrounded by them. I feel like I'm on this little island, and I always have these people telling me, well, you should write, you should write. I'm sorry, guys, it's never going to happen. It just isn't. Writing to me, sitting at that keyboard and having to type all these words, it feels like punishment.
Oh.
But you put me behind my microphone and that little red light goes on that says on air, boom, I'm alive.
I love that we're all called to different things and we find those passions in our life, and then they make our lives more full, because these people you're talking to, these writers, if they're anything like me, they probably enjoy writing and creating worlds and being in their house and whatnot, because they're able to do all that and then not talk to people. Like, a lot of us are really introverted, and so this idea of talking to another person and seeing that little red light that says on air, like that red light is terrifying, and I keep looking at it and being like, oh my goodness, people can hear me talking right now, and that's horrible. But I'm still putting up with it, because that I'm sitting next to somebody that is their calling, and just being here next to you makes me feel like I can get through this.
Well, thank you. And that's why I keep this more like a conversation between friends in the coffee shop.
It is. And so thank you for letting me be here, and thank you for sitting here and helping all of us writers through this, because writing and speaking about writing are two very, very different things. And it's always easier with somebody else there that's been down the road.
Well, I don't think I'll ever write a book, but I will always read every book that passes through my hands. So I'm the one you guys are writing for. At least that's I like to think I am.
Oh, definitely. And it's the person that we're writing the book for, and the people that might eventually want to be part of that. That's the reason that we put away all this fear and we're like, let's talk about it. Let's tell the world.
So was it a hard decision to come on the coffee shop?
It wasn't a hard decision, because I've heard your coffee shop or your discussions before on coffee shop. I'm like, that's awesome. And it always sounds like such a laid back conversation, and conversations I can do. As long as I don't, like right now at this moment when I'm thinking about, wow, people are listening to this and they probably think that I sound crazy, that makes it a little bit more difficult. But as long as I don't think about that, I think we're okay.
Well, like I always tell them, it's just a conversation between an author and a reader. So what was the one scene you had to take out that just absolutely crushed you?
Oh my goodness. There's so many. There was a scene where Kaiya and Lin, there was a little girl, and she grew up wanting to be Faye. Like she was 8 or 9 at this point, and she grew up wanting to be Faye. She wanted to be that warrior, and she ends up seeing Kaiya and Lin, another Faye, fight with one of the opposing sides, one of the warriors that was behind the destruction of their monasteries. And this little girl watched her heroes kill a man in front of her, and it just set everything forward as, wow, I wanted to be a monster. And it's a scene where Kaiya and Lin are trying to explain morality to this 8-year-old that they don't even know. And it was a really long scene, and I loved it, but it didn't add anything to the story. It was just reiterating what the reader had already learned from other parts of the book. So I deleted the poor little girl and the entire conversation, but I liked that scene because it was the Fae are the heroes of our story, but no hero is the hero in everyone's story, just like no villain is the villain in their own story. And I think it was really important to show both sides of our heroes and our villains so that they're completely understandable. And I love that scene, but it was crushing to get rid of. But overall, the story is better because it's not in it.
Well, as we discussed, editing is definitely an important part of the growth process for any manuscript. So, how far along is the sequel? How far along? Gotta know.
Again, I'm a pantser. I've written almost 120 pages of the sequel, so we're getting pretty close. Like, I feel like I'm a little bit more than halfway done with the sequel, but then I've got to take out all the parts that aren't necessary, and I'll go to the editor and whatnot. But it's so dark. It's so dark. It takes place, and it's interesting because the sequel actually takes place almost 200 years after The Last Fae. It's the same world, it's the same society, but it's advanced. And showing the political ramifications of the war that takes place in The Last Fae was really interesting because we all think about war when we fight them and how it's going to make an immediate difference for our society and for our people. But then there's so much that happens down the road that we really don't think about at the time. And so it's a dark story, but it's beautiful, and I love it. So I'm really excited, and I really love writing it, and I think you guys are going to love reading it.
So you are exploring the unintended consequences of war.
Yes, because The Last Fae takes place in the middle of a war, and there is magic involved, and because of how time works in the stories, you'll see some of the main characters still again 200 years from now, but it's different. And there's some interesting ramifications of a war that they really truly thought they were doing what was best for their society. And maybe it is what's best for their society, but nobody really sees what the actions we do now will do to affect our grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And Kai is going to get that ability to see that.
Well, I'm stealing this one, and I can't wait to steal the sequel off the coffee shop table. So you're going to have to promise to come back with me when the sequel's ready to launch, too.
Oh, I definitely will. I've really enjoyed being in here and talking to you about this.
All right. As I give everyone who's a guest on the coffee shop an opportunity, please give out your social media information.
All right, you can find me on Twitter at Tahani Nelson. My first name is spelled Tahani. I also have a Facebook page, Tahani Nelson, and then The Last Fae has a Facebook page as well. The Last Fae is spelled The Last. Fae is Faoii.
All right, and anyone trying to track me down, you can find me on Twitter at Jessie's POV. And you can always email me at the station, JESSIE at KLRNRadio.com. And now it is time for me to pour myself another cup of coffee and settle down with the last faii, and I will see you next time in the coffee shop.